Welcome to the Lesbian Peep Show. Peep Show.
Welcome to Lesbian Peep Show. My guest today is Jess Rothschild. I have been practicing saying your name. It feels like Rothschild really needs
a lot of people call me Jessie. It's like easier to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just feels like you have to like put some respect on it to say it correctly. And that's fine. So you're a writer, producer, and native New Yorker. In 2023, you created and executive produced the GLAAD Award-nominated series Finding Fire Island, which I loved. And was like actually a tipping point for me. And like, why don't I know more about not queer history specifically, but lesbian sapphic dyke history? Because I was really surprised to hear there's a whole lesbian history to Fire Island.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I knew about the boys and there's a new movie. And anyway,
Mm-hmm.
love them, but you like introduced me to that. So that was important to me. You also have a podcast that is very important to me and my like lesbian lore, hot takes, and deep dives, which is centered on a queer pop iconography and New York culture. Your podcasts include Rosie O'Donnell, Sandra Bernhard, and the L Word creator Ilene Chaiken. My favorite episodes are with Guinevere Turner.
Oh my God, that's an iconic one.
When I talk about like the Katie Lang breakup and the what was it? The taxi cab confessionals, that show.
Yes, she was filmed in Taxi Cab Confessions, which was one of the original HBO shows. Coming out of Henrietta Hudson, the cabbie was like parked outside and she gets in, and she was like so drunk that she didn't even know that she signed a release.
I remember watching that when I was little and had no business watching that, but I had no idea about the lesbian lore behind that. Anyway, okay. Yeah. And now you have a more recent podcast, which is Cult of Body and Soul. It is currently being released, which is about how SoulCycle transcended fitness as it captured the New York City zeitgeist with ritual, candlelight, and the cult of personality, as well as lots of scandals. I love your work. And the biggest thing for me is that it has been recontextualizing for me. It feels like from like a really insider point of view, the things that I was obsessed with in the early 2000s and didn't know even sometimes that I was looking at lesbian stuff.
Well, that's like what specifically?
Like Jackie Warner. And I was aware that she was a lesbian. I felt like that wasn't like central to what was going on there. And I just thought I was obsessed with her because I like strong women in fitness.
That's so funny. You know, my friend John Hill is doing a workout rewatch show called Show Pony, and I'm in one. I did like the third episode, and it's crazy. It's that episode is crazy that we did together.
I need to watch that. I didn't know about her and Jillian Michaels, but I also really like Jillian Michaels in spite of not really liking. Portia de Rossi was someone that I wanted to be. And so just like going back and thinking about some of the contestants from America's Next Top Model, basically everything that you've talked about from the early 2000s were things that I was like niche obsessed with and didn't understand. That's what I was looking at.
Me too. I mean, really, hot takes and deep dives is really feeding like high school and college age Jess of like myself. It's really indulging that part of myself and like digging deep into the areas that like that all happened really in my early 20s, we'll say. College, early 20s, and that's a lot of the work that I do there.
Yeah, it's like my Roman Empire, and I
and I'm obsessed. I remember when you did that reel last year where you're like, the juiciest lesbian shit is on this girl's podcast, and I remember resharing that. I'm like, this is the best endorsement I could ever hope for. So thank you for doing that. I love that so much.
Oh, you lesbian gossip girl. And like when I started this podcast, it's been a year now. My wife was like, who do you want to have on it? And I'm like, I mean, one day, Jess.
One day. Well, that day has come. Let's go.
Thanks. So excited. My like petty question off the top is that a lot of media has called this current like year / sort of moment a like resurgence of lesbian pop culture. And are you like happy to see that? Or is a part of you that's like, we've been out here, bitches? Like, how do you feel about this being marked a lesbian era?
Well, do they say that because of Chapel Roan? Like, what are they pointing to specifically?
I think probably just there are more out women calling themselves lesbians, like in pop culture. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So here's the thing. Renee Rapp and Chapel Roan, they're not so much on my radar. Like, I'm a 40-year-old woman. Like, I'm a grown-up. So these people aren't necessarily on my radar. I'm sure I'd feel very different if I were like 25 or 30. I'm sure they'd be my heroes of life. But I would argue if we dial back a few years and we look at when the L Word was rebooted, like Gen Q, like maybe like the first 2 seasons of that being on the air, coinciding with Abby Jacobson's show A League of Their Own being on the air. I would argue that was a more exciting time. That was right when Kristen Stewart publicly came out. I think today, I mean, maybe it's just not really what I'm looking at, but
Sure.
I think maybe we're just like a few years behind. Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So you were one of the founding writers at Autostraddle. I would
Yeah.
love to know what it was like to be there in that time. Like what were the vibes like? Did you guys get along? Was it what was it like to be on the ground floor there?
It was so interesting because, well, I mean, those girls really were like some of my first gay friends, and I really didn't have much of any gay friends at that time. I was very young. This was like 2008, 2009. Like the L Word had just ended. I guess I had a couple gay friends, and those girls were very cool. Like they were a lot, quote unquote, cooler than I was. So I never quite actually fit in with them. They were all kind of like indie and Brooklyn-y, even though they didn't necessarily live in Brooklyn, but like they were that type. And I had a real job, and they were just doing other stuff. Some of them worked in theater, some of them were writers, others worked for Carly worked for Logo. So they were more like really working in media. Our friend Haviland Stillwell was on Broadway at the time, and she was part of that group. And so I honestly never really fit in with those people, and really felt quite other because I had a real person job, and I had just like a level of, I don't know, I wasn't really dating. Like it was, I very much felt the odd man out, but it was an explosively creative time for us, for all of us individually. I mean, Haviland was on Broadway, starring in Fiddler on the Roof with Rosie O'Donnell and Harvey Fierstein. And she had done another Broadway show, and just the creativity was off the charts. Like every day, like we were churning out material. And Lady Gaga had like just started her career, and we felt like we discovered her. And Adam Lambert had just come off of it was like his season of American Idol. So in that sense, it was so, I mean, I'm sorry, that's the golden age of like gay shit happening. It was like that era. Being in it was amazing. Did I necessarily connect with those people on a personal level? No. But I'm forever grateful for that experience. I love the work that I did. Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. I've never really like talked about that publicly. But I will say I've exchanged messages with Reese, who's the founder of Autostraddle, while Gen Q was airing, and she was doing like recaps, and I was, doing hot takes and like interviewing like Ilene Chaiken and stuff. We reconnected, and I felt like we came together like in a joint sort of point of view, like there's nothing that joins two people together like gossiping or like talking shit about something. And so it felt really nice to reconnect all these years later and say, oh, this is the way we would have done it had we had the chance.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the L Word New York? Is that a thing? I have
no idea. I have no idea. The only thing I know is that Neil Patrick Harris's husband, who I didn't even know that he was an actor, but David Burka, gave some interview a week ago saying that he's been filming the L Word reboot up in Vancouver. That's all I know, period. That's all I know. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know why he said that. He wouldn't even be allowed to say that. We've heard nothing of them even finding a showrunner. I don't know. That's all I know, is that's like that news came out last week.
When you were like in the Autostraddle era, I just imagine there being ethical issues. Like there's always been ethical issues with like queer reporting, and particularly like overwhelmingly queer cities with the hubs of queer people. Mm-hmm. I can imagine knowing like a lot of stories about people who aren't out and having ethical conversations about that. Like I feel like people are stumbling on that now. There was a whole scandal about Billie Eilish and if she was outed by a reporter. Was that something that you all talked about, or was it just there was so much outness that there was plenty to talk about?
There was plenty to talk about. We never outed anybody. It's more like when somebody would come out, we would like heavily report on it and try to get an interview with them. But it's not like we were definitely a gossip site, but it was based on truth. Like it was based on a lot of like, maybe some stuff was going on in the comment section, but we definitely were in the business of like outing people. Like I remember when Shelley Wright came out, that was a big deal. And I interviewed her at the time. And I remember that interview making waves with like Rolling Stone because like she said something in the interview, but we certainly weren't like outing people. It was more talking about people who were out. And there were plenty of interesting people like Guinevere Turner who were out to talk about.
Yeah. Did you see Chasing Amy?
Yes.
What did you think about that?
I thought it was weird.
Say more.
I mean, I'm trying to remember. I saw it like 2 years ago. I thought actually, okay, wait, let me think. I definitely thought it was weird, but I was very impressed at the access and the grace Kevin Smith gave that filmmaker. I was very impressed that Kevin Smith embraced the filmmaker the way he did, because he easily could have been like running for the hills from this person, but instead he like invited the filmmaker into his world, and that was what impressed me. And it made me really affectionate. I mean, I've always felt great affection toward Kevin Smith and have always like loved his work. And obviously it was great to see like Guinevere Turner in it. Yeah. Why? What did you think about Chasing Amy?
Loved that it got more complicated as it went on, because I also loved Chasing Amy, but it was also like this scared me away.
Well, no, Chasing Amy, I call it my problematic fave. Like nothing will ever take away the love I have for that movie. And I know people criticize it, but number one, it's Ben Affleck's best role, period. Okay. And we wouldn't know necessarily. I mean, Joey Lauren Adams was in, I think, Dazed and Confused or something before Chasing Amy, but she will forever be associated with Chasing Amy. And she's great in that movie. And Guinevere Turner's in it, and they filmed that scene in Meow Mix. There's no way to take away you can't take it, and it's a great script. I mean, I know there's things to like pick apart, but like don't do that. Like just take it for what it is. I love it.
I do too. And I love that Guinevere's story inside of that happened. I also, my favorite moment is when he sat down with Joey Lauren Adams and she was like, I don't know what you want from me. And that felt like, I'm perimenopausal. That felt like a perimenopausal woman being interviewed. And I was like, yes, tell them what you want to say. Which is not how they feel about this.
Yeah.
I feel like you're just like full of all the lesbian secrets from the early 2000s. Is there any bit of lore that you feel like would be interesting to share that wouldn't get you in a lot of trouble?
Something that's not out there? I mean, there's a lot I know that.
I'm sure.
I mean, I guess here's something that probably people don't know, but it was said right in front of me, and they're selling a book right now. And so whatever, this is going to do nothing but sell more books. A few years ago when the L Word Gen Q was aired, I've never like talked about this because there just was never really a platform for it. So when they were, where do you live?
Kansas.
Oh, you live in Kansas. Okay.
I live in Kansas.
So when Gen Q was airing, Showtime would have like Kate and Leisha do appearances, and other cast members like Sepideh Moafi and the other girl who played Danny. They would do appearances at lesbian bars that would be like showing the episodes. And so one night, Kate and Leisha showed up at, I mean, we knew they were, showed up at Henrietta Hudson, and my friend was hosting the night. And she did like L Word trivia and whatever. And we were able to go inside. It's a very tiny bar. And somehow there was some joke of like, oh, Shane's like been through everyone, and she's like, oh, not me. Like Kate Menig was referring to, oh, not me in real life. But she did admit in front of a very small group of people, maybe it was just like 3 of us, that she and Mia Kirshner did hook up in Canada. And maybe it was probably just like a one-time thing, but I think that partially drove the Shane and Jenny storyline in the 6th season. So I wonder if I'm sure that's not in the book, in their book that she and Leisha wrote, because that would have like probably come out, but she said it and I was standing right there. So,
I have purchased it. I haven't listened to it yet, but her, like, because she was not identifying as a part of the community when the show started, right?
No, which is so, I mean, it's so strange. Listen, everyone's on has their own timeline, but yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, that's what she says. Or at least she was out. I think quickly she was able to figure it out, and she was out to Leisha, and like they had like their small group, and like she was dating, but definitely wasn't publicly out. Kate Menig, I think, only publicly said she was gay for the first time in an interview with RuPaul on RuPaul's podcast, which was years ago at this point. I'd have to look up when that was, but that's when I remember like, oh wow, she's like talking about it.
Yeah. I think I just sort of like blacked out about her not being out and was just like, yeah, I'm going to disregard
It was like
that
an open
information.
secret for sure.
Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
you know, not that like I know, but I didn't want that information. So I didn't hold on to it.
Okay.
So let's talk about SoulCycle. Is you were really into SoulCycle is your like entry point,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I
Is
always
this-
let me put it this way.
Okay.
I say I know 3 things. Well, really I know 4 things. I know there are 4 things that I know about Fire Island, Madonna, the L Word, and SoulCycle. I don't know anything about anything else. Those are the 4 subjects I can expound on for hours.
Would you say that SoulCycle is your first like cult-like experience, or do those others elicit cults as well?
Well, the word cult is I mean, although I'm telling you, like the responses that I'm getting are like, oh, this is a cult. Like I was using it as like a flippant sort of like jokey term, but the more episodes that come out, real life people in my life are like, Jess, this was a cult. Like sort of like reflecting back, like, no, like this actually was a cult. Yeah. Whether I agree with, I think they were cult of personality, but I would say, yeah, because with other things, like you could talk about the L Word and you could talk about Madonna. These are 2 things that inspire a ravenous fandom, but that is being a fan of something. And you can have people can have really intense fans. Like Madonna fans are psychotic. The L Word fans are psychotic, but you're a fan of an artist and like of a thing. Mm-hmm. SoulCycle is a place. Fire Island is a place. But yeah, so, and SoulCycle, these people are real, like that you're like getting attached to. It was very much kind of like the Real Housewives of SoulCycle. And that's kind of what I create in this series is like, here are like key characters that I've been able to create who are real people that you can like latch onto and follow their stories.
I would be totally susceptible. I feel like exercise is kind of akin to the like Hillsong kind of religious experience, you know, where people are like, is it because of religion or is it because it's a spiritual experience to be in a room full of music with people? And I think that adding exercise to that, it has a similar experience. I did the class, but just remotely.
Oh my God. How was it?
I love it. But there was one time I was laying on my garage floor after like this great emotional release, and they told me to give my bones up to the light. And I was like, I am in a cult.
That's a spiritual experience. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I love it. And if I was there every day with them.
Yeah. In fact, it's so interesting that you brought up the class, because the class is something that started in New York City. And I didn't even know they do it remotely, but in next week's episode, the 5th episode of Cult and Body and Soul, I ask people, you know, what has come close to capturing the zeitgeist. And one of the former soul instructors says, she names the class and like describes it. And she's like, that has come close, but still is not it quite.
Yeah, it's good. They don't do as much with the instructors. Like we don't know them as well. It's more about you. And
so wait, describe the class, because I've never done it. Can you like describe it?
So I used to be a social worker. So like all these sorts of like somatic things that they're doing are things I'm familiar with. So the science of what they're doing is actually good, but there's a lot of like somatic release, like shaking and making sounds and stuff. And then strength training, which is like, you know, basic sort of strength training, squats and stuff. You don't use any heavy weights. And then a lot of somatic release in between that, which is also really good for like releasing lactic acid between things. So like the exercise science is there, but it's very focused on emotional release throughout. And then there's some sort of like yoga components, but you're doing a lot of different kinds of movement. It's giving like, it's pretty white feeling with like the flowy arms kind of movements, you know?
I should do it. I'm surprised that I've gone this far in life never trying it.
There's a free one on YouTube if you want to just check it out.
No, I want to be in the room. I want to
hear everything.
I'm all about like doing it live. Like that's why like I love SoulCycle, because it's an in-person collective experience. I was never, even in the pandemic, I was not doing like remote classes. I would go for really long walks, or like they would during the you know, when like Peloton took off, I wasn't doing that at all. You know, I don't have a bike in my home or anything. I would do classes, you to do them like masked and safe and separated and whatever. Like I would do anything to get in like that class environment, even when it was very difficult.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What is it like going to SoulCycle, especially like in its peak when you were there?
In its peak, it's like going to the hottest club with the hottest DJs and the hottest people. They turn off all the lights, they're playing the newest music, and you're all dancing, and it's candlelit, and that's it. It's this collective experience, and you're having this spiritual experience. And in between all of this very intentional music that's being played, you're moving your body to the rhythm. So somebody is coaching you through. It's like you're dancing on the bike. So it's, in a way, it's for people who can't dance. Like, you makes you feel like you really have this powerful ability. Yeah. And it's just the greatest endorphin rush you could possibly imagine. And it is this truly spiritual experience. And the instructors are trained how to spiritually take you to another level.
Okay.
Through their voice, through their language that they're using.
So you talk about the trainer training. What did you learn about that?
This is what I was always like super curious about when I was really into SoulCycle, because there were no details about it ever given. It was very secretive. It was very gate kept. This is what I was always like super curious about when I was really into SoulCycle, because there were no details about it ever given. It was very secretive. It was very gate kept. You had to audition to get in, and like no one really knew what the hell they were saying to these people for like 8 weeks at a time. And I was desperate. I used to joke like I want to audition to be an instructor and just to get into the program to like see what the hell they're telling these people. And what I found out was really like just a lot of details about the language they were given. And they are on some level teaching how to hook riders through certain pieces of the class. Like there's a moment where you don't say anything, you just move candles around, how to build the actual playlist. It's taking you through this spiritual journey. So like it starts off with sort of slower songs, and also they're speaking very slower. They're speaking very slowly, very intentionally. They're using very colorful language. So for example, instead of just saying, okay, sit back in the saddle, it'd be like, okay, draw your hips back into the saddle and lengthen your arms, like using like very flowery, colorful language to explain something. And then it ratchets up, and like there's eventual, very high energy music playing, and then they bring you back down. And then at that moment, that's called like the soulful moment. Anybody who works in theater, you could call it the 11 o'clock number, which is basically the number before the finale of any sort of theatrical experience. And that's when they kind of stop talking. They turn off all the lights, and like sometimes they'll, hook into you. They'll like eye contact. They'll move candles around. Sometimes they'll put a candle right on your bike and let you blow it out. There's all sorts of like theatrics happening. And so that's really what I learned, was that all of that is very deliberate and a lot of thought is put into it. And I speak directly with the woman who ran the training program. She's kind of our gateway into the story. This woman, Janet Fitzgerald, who really is the person to credit with success with SoulCycle becoming a cult-like phenomenon, I would say.
I have a friend that goes currently, and she has recently gotten to blow out the candle, and it was life-changing. She felt like she was really transformed.
That's so funny.
It's still working. There was one, and this isn't something I would know about because social media wasn't like what it is now, but there was one instructor that was a lesbian. Did she have a lesbian following? Were we not talking about that?
Well, a lot of the instructors were gay.
Stop.
Well, Janet's gay. No, a lot of the female instructors who became huge were gay, for sure. If you look up Stacey Griffith, she's the most recognizable figure. She's obviously she's been out forever. She became like a page 6 like staple because she got into a relationship with this woman who was married to this hedge fund guy who she left her husband for Stacey, and then they were in like a 10-year relationship, and then they broke up. And Janet herself is gay and like talks openly about it. Like within the first 3 seconds of her being on interviewed in the first episode, she talks about how a spiritual counselor like basically told her that she's gay. And yeah, like tons of, certainly gay boys, but also like a lot of women were gay too.
Yeah. Okay. I have the spiky hair one. That's Stacey.
That's Stacey.
Yeah. Well, and I was looking her up and I see that she's either engaged or married to someone named Melanie. So now there's a gay Melanie Griffith, which I love.
Oh my God, oh my God. Okay, so this is another story. This is interesting. I forgot about her. So that woman, they're not together. No, those are two different people. They happen to have the last name.
Oh.
This woman, Melanie Griffith, she's phenomenal. She's one of my all-time favorites. She was a rider in the very early days. She was the first rider to become an instructor. She was married to a man, had 3 kids. She had a whole life with the husband. And when I started riding, she was always seen with this girl. Like, this girl was always in the front row, and they were like best friends, whatever. And I always used to be like, they're together, it's clear. And then cut to, of course, she divorces the husband and now they're married, her and the writer. Yeah. So no, a lot of the very, very popular female instructors are gay. I mean, some aren't, but a lot are.
What is your favorite story that you uncovered that you weren't looking for when doing this sort of research?
I think it's really it's not a favorite story, but I think it's really interesting how wildly different all the pay structures were. Like how they were all paid. Like some people like master instructors were paid over $1,000 per class. I mean, that means you're pulling in over $1 million a year. Whereas if you were just like somebody who came in later in the company, you're making $50 a class and having to have like other jobs. So like I found that to be very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I always knew they were paid very well, but I didn't know how poorly some others were paid. Okay. So I found that too. So I really like illuminate that in next week's episode.
I thought the mysterious death was really stood out. And I know in there's not any more information. Is there more like people chatting about what they think happened there? That's
the most amount, what you're hearing in there. And a lot is said in that episode. If you listen to what they're saying, it's spelled out right in front of you. Okay. So it's surprising to me that everyone's like, how did Claire die? I'm like, did you not listen? It's literally spelled out in front of you. Like everything is said in the episode. Like just put the pieces together. So that story about Claire Veronica Walsh was actually the first piece that was the first article I came across when I started getting really into SoulCycle. That her death had happened the year prior. And when I started like Googling about SoulCycle and just like articles, that story would always come up and like there was never anything about it. And my friends and I would always be like, what happened to Claire? And so it was definitely important to me to tell that story. And she continues to be throughout the series. There are callbacks to Claire. Like she is forever remembered as this beloved, young, budding instructor, a person who would have been a superstar in whatever she went on to do in life, whether that be whether your destiny is to become a SoulCycle instructor or to do something else. She clearly had a very special light about her. And I think it's a striking story because she was so young when she died. She was 22. And so her name gets brought up throughout as because it kept coming up in the interview. So I intentionally left that in to keep her memory alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super sad. How did people respond to you hitting them up about this? Were people excited to talk about SoulCycle? Was there any like trepidation about it?
I think that's a really great question. I think some people were like, yes, absolutely. Some people. Other people were people who I didn't know. People who I knew were yes. People who I didn't know or people who I had to get through other people, like former front desk workers, some of the anonymous people that are used throughout, or just instructors who I didn't know, but were recommended to me, people from HQ corporate who I didn't know. I really had to talk to them about what the vision was and that it ultimately was going to be a positive piece while straddling the line. Like, we're not going to shy away from the icky parts, but ultimately this is meant to be a love letter to this time in New York City history.
Yeah. You talk about the instructor that you traveled for because you saw her and like, that's the one for me, which kind of speaks to the cult of personality around it. Yeah.
Stevie, the instructor, Stevie Santangelo, she changed my life. She got me hooked. There would be
What?
none of I mean, she changed the trajectory of my, I mean, I met so many of my closest friends in her class, and she introduced me to so many people. Um, so many people you hear on the series are through her, and she was gracious enough to do it. And Stevie is a one of a kind. Like anybody, if anybody looks up Stevie Santangelo, she's a one of a kind. And Stevie is somebody who has never given an interview publicly about SoulCycle.
Hmm.
The New York Times wanted to interview her when some scandal broke out a few years ago, that we cover in this coming week's episode. And she's not really somebody who's looking for a lot of attention publicly, but
Mhm.
she obviously we were quite, she knows me, and she was an immediate yes, which was interesting. I hoped she would do it, but it wasn't a guarantee. Nothing's a guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah. But having her in the series is so important. Like my whole story gets told because she said yes, because Janet said yes, because certain friends of mine said yes when they didn't have to.
What was it about her for you?
Stevie conjured magic in the room. She is a magnetic, charismatic leader. And charismatic leaders have a certain energy. Well, Stevie in particular, and it's really in the third episode where some friends, some fellow people that I knew from her class, the three of us kind of really explain the magic of Stevie. And she had a certain ability to calm you down before the class started. And it wasn't stressful. It wasn't frenetic. She wouldn't play any mute before class started. There wasn't any music playing. She was just talking to you. She would talk for maybe like a minute about like the day. And other instructors did this as well, but she did it maybe most effectively. And then it would start. And it wouldn't be like catapulting you onto a roller coaster. It would be like a slow progression. So you never felt anxious when starting. And my friend Amit in the series said that she drew people who were really on a search for something. I think that we all connected to her in some way. I mean, I connected to her. Listen, I just saw a photo of her like on the website. She was a new instructor. Her photo popped up and I saw something in the photo. I was drawn to her on a spiritual level. I felt like I could tell she had been through life. I have a strong intuition, and there was something about her that literally pulled me through the screen.
It feels like this is something that pulls people together for like a sense of belonging and a sense of ritual that like used to be primarily from religion in a way that that's not the culture of our country anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm not anti, but whatever. There's lots of things to say about all of that, but I think people innately have this need to gather and know what to expect and get something specific from an experience. And so it feels like that's why these things can become culty, because then they become a part of who you are.
And Stevie in particular was very available. So other instructors, a guy who's interviewed, he has this hilarious line in the series. He goes, I was writing a screenplay about my time at SoulCycle, and looking back, there was a lot of coyote on ugly energy, like appear available, but never be available. Stevie was actually available, and she would invite you out to dinner after, like a group, people who were like in her inner circle. We would all go out for dinner, like a group of 15 of us. At night after class. Some of her classes were very late at night, which I think added to some of the magic. Like it was crazy. We were starting the thing at 8:30 at night. So the time you get out of there, it's 9:30, and then you're eating there was just this ritual to it, and it was something that we all really looked forward to, like kicking off the week. It was like a Monday night, and we talk about that Monday night 8:30 class, which now in retrospect is so insane. Like I can't barely make it to a 4:00 class in the afternoon on 8:30. So I think it speaks to how badly we want it all to be there.
Yeah. You also talk about there being like vehicles that people would like check in and go back to, like very like fancy, rich, elite people going to classes.
That was happening. So in New York, So for example, I live downtown. So when you think downtown is like the village, when you think of like the East Village, the West Village, Brooklyn, that's Brooklyn's separate entity, but it's still considered like downtown. Uptown, if you think of like the Real Housewives, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, that was all happening on the Upper East Side, Upper West Side. Those are like housewives. Just think of like New York housewives. So yeah, that energy is happening.
I'm curious, and I'm also like fitness adjacent. I love fitness.
Oh,
so I would have been fitnessing at this time as well. And there, at least here, wasn't like as much going on with fitness outfits. It was just like leggings and tank tops. Now there's like a whole. Was there an aspect of that? What you're wearing to this, or was everybody kind of in a uniform?
Everybody was wearing a like SoulCycle branded stuff. Like they would sell, like their logo was like skull and crossbones or the wheel. And so there was like, I always was wearing leggings that had like SoulCycle like stuff. Like they'd be Lululemon leggings, but it'd have like the SoulCycle like logo on it. 100% of people in class, it would be a complete outlier if somebody wasn't wearing, you know, a piece of clothing. That was like in the heyday. Today, nobody is wearing that stuff.
Yeah.
You'd be
that
really
like
weird if you were. Yeah. It's just, it's so interesting. Like, cause I've had to go back I went back in the fall when I started the project just for like observations. And I was like, wow, this is so weird. It's so different just in terms of the intensity, and nobody, you know, was in the stuff. And then even now, like I continue to go back and still nobody is in the stuff. Nobody's wearing the clothes.
What do you think this story that you're telling says about like who we were during this time period? Like culturally, why did it hit the way it did? And what does the story illuminate about like what was going on with the culture in the like early 2010s?
I think that we all want a place that's not home, work, or a bar to connect. And I think it offered a place that wasn't alcohol driven. It was driven by a positive thing, which is music and spirituality. Whether you were calling it that or not, you were drawn to an instructor who is preaching, for lack of a better word. That is a spiritual experience. And the gathering and the community is why it was successful. And so I think it's about having it's what's known as a third space, which are basically outside of home, you know, home, family, work, and, you know, bars, alcohol driven venues. Yeah, I mean, it's also like why people go to concerts. It's why people rave, but those places are fueled by alcohol and drugs and whatever. Whereas this is a much more positive environment, and you can connect in a positive way, and you can feed off the energy of people. And also, by the way, there wasn't Instagram on the level that Instagram over time and Instagram started in, I think, like 2011 or 2012, but there were no Instagram stories. It was just you posted a photo. And even Facebook, it was less intense. It wasn't the constant like looking and where am I and what am I doing? It was you showed up and it was a real life experience. So I think that's why too.
That was just like the sepia toned photo era.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Totally.
You put a cool vintage filter on your macaroni.
Yeah.
More recent scandal has to do with the owner being a Trump supporter. Is that a part of the story that you're telling, or is that?
Oh, it's the entire next episode.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should be out by the time this launches. So can we talk about that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. So basically, do you know what Equinox is?
Yes.
Okay, so Equinox acquired SoulCycle. Equinox is a subsidiary of another company called Related. And Related is a real estate firm. It's a global real estate firm. And Related owns basically every apartment building in New York and Los Angeles. It's a huge real estate firm. And they own Equinox, which owns SoulCycle and other yoga studios, other fitness places as well. And in 2019, when Trump was running for re-election 2020, news leaked that the chairman of Related, that all the way at the tippy top, the billionaire owner, was holding a Trump fundraiser at his house. And so all hell broke loose. because it sort of flew in the face of everything SoulCycle stood for, which was a very like gay, queer, inclusion, very diverse place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that surprising to people, or we just weren't thinking about who was at the top before?
I think nobody was thinking about who's at the top. I think most people didn't even know. I think people understood that yes, it's now owned by Equinox, but they didn't understand that Equinox was owned by this huge other company.
And did that shift the culture, that acquisition?
Oh, tremendously. The founders left. The SoulCycle founders left when they completed the Equinox acquisition. They left for numerous reasons, and they were paid out very well. They received $90 million each. They're doing great. And the entire culture changed. The entire culture changed. And that's why so many employees quit as a result. And then the scandal with this billionaire owner, his name is Stephen Ross, that was kind of a tipping point. And it was also a tipping point in our culture. If you look back at the 2016 election, nothing has been the same in culture ever since. It's not the people love to point to the pandemic, but I point to the 2016 election. That is when society was forever divided.
I agree. I've been like talking online, public facing since the early 2009, 2010.
Okay.
In 2016, I had just like troves of women DMing me like, oh my God, I didn't know who my husband was around that election, which is a pretty big thing to miss, but also like that's a pretty deep divide.
Wow. That's an insane thing to say.
I mean,
Wow.
hundreds of them.
Wow.
Yeah. So it feels like not only did we like notice how divided we were, but it just like shifted everyone to be much more aware of that, even in their homes. A lot of those women are, in gay relationships now. So we love to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it basically played out like, what was going on at this company in this place, SoulCycle, right? It's just a microcosm for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how it rippled and affected in this community. And we explore that gets explored in the later episodes of, the whole thing is only 7 episodes. So, as of right now, 4 are out. So like episodes 4 and 5, really, that's where we are in the narrative. Like this is where we are in the story. Like I'm telling like a chronological story.
So did people just like leave, or were there like big public statements?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Oh yeah, plenty of people had I'm boycotting on Instagram. I'm boycotting. Some people, some people. It depends on your personality. If you're like a loud person, then you're going to express it loudly. If you're just a private person, you're just going to like stop going. Or you're like, you know what? I don't like this, but I still love doing this workout. So I'm just going to keep going and try not to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of how I feel about shopping anywhere.
Yeah. Well, there's this great,
right now.
I read this great quote in the 5th episode. I quote this Vanity Fair article that said, Equinox, Trump, and the embarrassment of being a consumer in 2019. And it says, maybe you don't have an Equinox membership to cancel, but corporate ethics will eventually come for us all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you hope is the legacy of this particular project?
I think really shining a light on what a monster moment this was in the New York City zeitgeist. I mean, and throughout, LA as well, but it was most profoundly expressed in New York. And I think it was just an insane, fabulous time to be in New York City and to be part of this. It was so exciting. It was this exclusive club to be in. And the story has never been told. And I couldn't believe it had never been told. And I was like, well, if no one's going to do it, like, let me see if I can do it. Like, let me see. And I took my crack at it and I was able to do it. So I think also like for people who never lived in New York, like I think there's been a lot of curiosity about like, oh, what was that thing? Or like, oh yeah, that's that bad place. I think like showing how great it was like in the heyday is also because it was a phenomenon. It was a phenomenon. And I think it's always interesting to explore phenomenons that happen throughout history.
Well, and I think you're particularly good at it, especially in a time where like with the way social media works now, I think people are really feel anxious about having a correct opinion about things, and for good reason and bad reasons, whatever. But that makes things feel really black and white. So I think you do a really good job of being like, here's everything that's great. And then here's sort of this underbelly, and here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. And like all of those things are everywhere all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I definitely don't shy away from the underbelly or the icky stuff, but I do frame it my same approach. I use the same approach that I did Finding Fire Island, which was my documentary about Fire Island. I there too didn't shy away from the icky stuff. We talked about the racism and the transphobia, but nobody walked away listening to all of Finding Fire Island being like, she only talked about the racism and the transphobia. Like, no, that's nobody thinks of it that way. And I don't think anybody's going to walk away from listening to Cult of Body and Soul thinking she only talked about Trump. Like, that would be an insane takeaway. Because it's said one time in one episode.
Right. Well, and there was a whole culture and existence of this thing before any of that was even on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing's one thing.
A lot of it's the lead up to, it's just showing the whole pendulum, how it swung and how it swings the other way. And it still exists, which is amazing.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, but you sort of already answered this. Is there like a next project for you? Is there another like get into the weeds on something?
That's so funny. Well, I will say there's going to be a little bit more Finding Fire Island. I've been asked to do, there's going to be a little bit more of that next year. And then I don't know. And then, of course I will continue doing something. Listen, I could do a thing on the L word, but I don't think those people will talk. And yeah, that's it. I don't think anybody there is willing to tell the truth. And maybe they don't even think it's a story worth telling. It may be too niche in a way.
But I would argue it's like perfectly niche because the people who care know exactly who
they're obsessive. They're obsessive. Yeah, no, they're insane. The way Madonna fans are insane. Yeah.
I am one of them. And I don't know a lesbian over 35, I don't think, that doesn't have some L word origin story.
My Wi-Fi name is Bet Porter.
My wife tells the story of being in the computer lab at college, watching it in the back row where nobody could see. There's a lot of secret ways that people are watching the L word to figure themselves out, which is important. I would love an L word deep dive. Okay. What's your favorite L word story that you do know that people have talked about? Like a behind the scenes story?
My favorite L word behind the scenes story? I feel like they've all been told. Let me think.
Even ones that are on your podcast.
The fact that, there's so much that I can't say. I would say the fact that Guinevere Turner titled it the L word. The fact that a lot of the L word really owes itself to Guinevere Turner, and they won't admit that. And that's something they shy away from. And we need to put respect on Guinevere Turner's name. And she has plenty of respect, but we need to take another look at how incredible Guinevere Turner has been for our community.
Yeah, I would agree. Not enough respect. And I would say the same thing about you. These young lesbians that are influencers that are maybe starting to touch 30 are always talking about how there's not role models. There's not lesbians in media older than them, or they don't have someone to look to, that's where I'm headed. And I'm that's so not not true.
You know what it is also? I think if I could say my one message, which has nothing to do with SoulCycle or anything, but it does have to do with being gay in today's society. If I could say one thing to your younger listeners is you don't have to be in a relationship. Being gay is not about being in a relationship, period. And you're actually going to be a lot happier outside of a relationship, all told. And figure out what you like, what your interests are, what you're into in all areas of life before you get into a relationship. And don't let your friends pressure you to get into something. Women tend to intensely attach to each other in a way that gay men don't, and men in general don't. And I think that we as gay women could learn a lot from gay men in terms of just freedom, being free. And yeah, that's something that I really would love to impart on younger women. Because guess what? Everyone I know who got married got divorced. So don't let that be a lesson. Okay. Don't just calm down, do some traveling on your own. Don't get so obsessed with somebody else. Get obsessed with yourself. Do some reading, period.
I think that's great advice. Where can people find you and where can people find your latest podcast?
Yeah. So I'm Jess X NYC on Instagram. And from there, you can find everything. I think just find me on Instagram and I'm always posting videos of my interviews, a lot of things that you've talked about here. Instagram's the best way. And through there, you'll find what I put out a lot of content and you'll find the avenues that you're into.
Can I share the syllabus that you sent me?
I sent you a syllabus? Oh my God. I forgot about that. Yes, please. I forgot about this.
When I first connected with Jess, I think I was just talking about your show or something. We were talking about this, the early 2000s lesbian gossip, and you sent me a list of episodes that would be the best ones for me. And I felt like I had received a golden ticket.
I sent Erin a must listen list of episodes of Hot Takes and Deep Dives, which is my weekly show to listen to.
Yeah.
And that's where there's a lot going on.
Yeah. I've had a lot of gay euphoria, but I think that you sending me that was probably top tier. Next to sex, but
this is, by the way, this is the clip to post on Instagram. This is the clip. What's happening right now?
Thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm so honored. I'm obsessed with everything that you do, and I was excited to see that you had a new piece coming out. And if you did the L word one,
we'll see. One of my best friends is Elizabeth Ziff, who was a writer on the show, and her band Betty did the theme song for the L word. And I'm very close with those women. Elizabeth has a book. I keep saying we got to write your memoir. A lot of the stories would be in this memoir that I want her to write. She holds a lot. She holds the key to a lot. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Creep Show.